The Golden Bough, a Kemetic soul's journey to the field of reeds. Introduction: The unraveling of the cord of life. In the spiritual cosmology of ancient Egypt, death is not a terminus, but a profound and perilous transition. It is the moment the intricate knot of a human being is untied, its constituent parts separating to begin their own sacred journeys. This is not an end, but a controlled, ritualistic disassembly, undertaken with the ultimate hope of reforging these elements into a new, eternal, and divine form. The entire process, from the final exhalation to the hoped-for reunion in paradise, is a testament to a belief system that saw life and death as an unbroken cyclical continuum. The final breath and the great separation. The moment of passing is a quiet cataclysm. The light of the world recedes, sounds muffle into an encompassing silence, and with the final exhalation, the great separation begins. This last breath is not merely air, it is the departure of the Ka, the vital essence that distinguishes a living person from a dead one. The K, a spiritual double created by the ram-headed god Khnum on his potter's wheel at the same instant as the physical body, now drifts from its mortal housing. It seeks its new anchor, the tomb, which the Egyptians called the House of the Ka, where it will await sustenance from the living in the form of offerings. Simultaneously, the B, the Be, the unique personality, character, and reputation of the individual, is unmoored. Depicted as a bird with a human head, the bee is now free to travel between the earthly realm and the underworld, the Duat. Its first flight is one of grief and disorientation, a fluttering between the familiar world it has just lost and the terrifying unknown path that lies ahead. It is the part of the soul that can revisit the living, a tangible link between what was and what will be. Other essential components also separate. The Shuyet, or shadow, a powerful and ever-present dark silhouette in life, detaches itself, becoming a potent but vulnerable entity that can also travel freely. The Ren, the secret true name of the individual, must be preserved through inscription and memory, for to be nameless is to be powerless, to cease to exist entirely. And within the now still physical form, the Ket, lies the IB, the heart. It is not removed during mummification, for it is the seat of consciousness, emotion, and moral judgment. And it awaits its final, terrifyingly crucial role in the great balance. The sacred rites of reanimation. With the soul's components scattered, the living assume their most sacred duty, to aid the dead in their journey. The meticulous art of mummification is far more than simple preservation. It is a vital act of consecration, ensuring the Ket remains recognizable so that the mobile bee can return to it each night and the stationary K has a permanent home. Magical servant statues, known as the Shaptis, are included to perform any compulsory labor required of the deceased in the afterlife. The culmination of these earthly preparations is the opening of the mouth ceremony, performed by priests on the mummified body or representative statue. This powerful ritual magically reawakens the senses for the afterlife. Using sacred instruments, they touch the mouth, eyes, ears, and nose of the deceased, restoring the spiritual capacity to speak, see, hear, and breathe in the Duat. This rite is the critical act of transformation, changing the inert physical body, the Ket, into a spiritualized body, the Sha, which is now capable of interacting with the gods and demons of the underworld. This entire process reveals a deeper understanding of the Kemetic view of death. It is not a singular event but a sacred process. The goal is not merely to preserve a memory, but to facilitate a cosmic reassembly. The careful separation of the soul's parts is the necessary first step in a perilous journey whose entire purpose is to purify and test these components before they can be successfully reunited to form the HH, aka a transfigured and eternal spirit. Part 1, A Passage Through Fire and Shadow, The Ordeal of the Duat. The soul, now a spiritualized Sha accompanied by its fluttering bee, steps from the tomb into the Duat. This is the underworld, the hidden place, a realm of profound darkness that mirrors the sun god Ra's perilous journey through the 12 hours of the night. The journey that unfolds is not a simple passage, but a harrowing ordeal, an initiation designed to strip away all that is unworthy, testing the soul's very essence before it can approach the divine. The landscape of the hidden place, the Duat, is a land of terrifying paradoxes. Its geography is a twisted reflection of the familiar world of Egypt, with rivers, islands, and fields, but these features are imbued with a supernatural and menacing quality. The soul must navigate past fantastical and horrifying landmarks, lakes of fire that burn eternally, unyielding walls of iron that bar the way, and forests of gleaming turquoise trees that offer no comfort. The air itself is thick and heavy, sometimes described as a suffocating air of destruction, and the deep silence is often shattered by the disembodied, terrifying roaring of unseen beasts. This is the road of the secret things, a path hidden from mortals and even some gods, where every shadow holds a potential threat and every step is fraught with peril. The gauntlet of gates and guardians, the path through the Duat, is structured as a gauntlet, partitioned by a series of gates or mounds, each defended by a demonic guardian. These beings are nightmarish amalgams of human and animal forms, grotesque and armed with enormous knives. They are names that speak of their horrific nature: he who lives on snakes, he who dances in blood, or dreadful. To pass these sentinels is not a matter of force but of esoteric knowledge and magical power, or Heka. The deceased, armed with the spells from their personal Book of the Dead, must approach each guardian and address it by its true and secret name. In Kemetic thought, to know something's Ren is to have power over it. In these moments of high tension, a misspoken word or a lapse in memory means instant annihilation. Upon correctly naming the guardian and reciting the proper pacifying spell, the demon's nature is magically transformed. No longer a threat, it becomes a protector, allowing the soul to pass and even offering its aid for the journey ahead. This repeated trial underscores that the Duat is an initiatory crucible. The monstrous guardians are not merely external foes. They are symbolic manifestations of the soul's own inner darkness, its fears, its failings, its capacity for violence. By confronting these horrors and speaking their true names, the soul demonstrates profound self-acknowledge and a mastery over its own base nature, proving its worthiness to proceed. The ever-present threat of the second death beyond the gatekeepers, the Duat teems with other dangers. The colossal chaos serpent, Apep, eternal enemy of Ra, lurks in the darkness, seeking to swallow the sunbark and devour all souls with it. Vengeful entities known as slaughterers roam the shadowy landscapes, hunting for the souls of the unrighteous, to dismember on behalf of Osiris. The very landscape is a trap, with mounds of fire from which there is no escape. The ultimate terror that permeates the Duat is not of eternal punishment, but of absolute oblivion. This is the second death, a complete and final cessation of existence. This horror is given form in the monstrous goddess Amit, the devourer of souls, who patiently awaits the outcome of the final judgment, ready to consume any heart that fails the test. The constant threat of being utterly erased lends an unbearable weight to every challenge the soul faces on its path toward the light. Part 2. The Weight of a Lifetime. Judgment in the Hall of Two Truths. After surviving the chaotic terrors of the Duat, the soul arrives at the threshold of its final trial, the Hall of Two Truths, also known as the Hall of Ma'at. Here, the oppressive darkness gives way to a vast, silent, and intimidating chamber, where the soul's entire existence will be weighed in the balance. The drama is no longer one of monstrous confrontation, but of profound, internal reckoning. The architecture of cosmic order. The design of the hall is a physical manifestation of Ma'at, the cosmic principle of truth, justice, and order. Its architecture is grand, symmetrical, and monumental, a deliberate and stark contrast to the twisted, chaotic landscapes of the Duat. The chamber is defined by towering papyrus columns and a high cavetto cornice, a roof line adorned with a protective frieze of alternating ostrich plumes, the symbol of Ma'at, braziers representing sacred fire, and rearing Uri cobras. The entire structure is designed as a sacred interface between the terrestrial and the divine, a miniature model of the perfected cosmos. The atmosphere is one of absolute stillness, heavy with the presence of the gods and the gravity of eternity. The walls are described as high and spiked, guarded by fire-spitting serpents, creating a space of ultimate intimidation where no falsehood can survive. The divine tribunal. The soul does not face this moment alone. It is led into the great hall by the solemn, jackal-headed god Anubis, the master of embalming, who now acts as a gentle guide for the dead. Before the soul, the divine tribunal is assembled in all its terrifying majesty. Enthroned under a canopy sits the great judge Osiris, lord of the afterlife. His skin is green, the color of vegetation and rebirth, and he holds the crook and flail, symbols of kingship and dominion. At his side are his devoted sisters, the goddesses Isis and Nephthys, their presence a quiet promise of protection and magical aid. Arranged in a long, imposing row are the 42 assessors of Ma'at, a divine jury of terrifying deities, each representing one of the gnomes of Egypt and a specific sin. They sit wearing the feather of truth, holding sharp knives, their gazes fixed upon the deceased. Standing ready is the ibis-headed Thoth, the divine scribe, with his palette and reed brush poised to record the final, irrevocable verdict. And crouching patiently nearby is the monstrous Ammit, the devourer, a horrific chimera with the head of a crocodile, the forepart of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. She waits to consume any soul judged unworthy. The psychostasia, weighing of the heart.
I have not stolen, I have not killed, I have not told lies.
This is not merely a plea of innocence, but a powerful magical act, a verbal affirmation of a life lived in accordance with Ma'at. Then comes the climactic moment, the psychostasia, or the weighing of the heart. Anubis leads the soul to a great golden scale. He carefully takes the deceased's heart, the IB, which contains the complete record of their life's thoughts, emotions, and deeds, and places it on one of the pans. On the other pan, he places a single, pure white ostrich feather, the feather of the goddess Ma'at, the very symbol of cosmic truth. The emotional weight of this moment is unbearable. A lifetime of choices, of secret kindnesses and hidden shames is held in perfect balance against the absolute, unyielding weight of truth.
O my heart, do not stand up against me as a witness, do not oppose me in the tribunal.
This plea reveals the true nature of the judgment. It is not an external verdict imposed by gods, but an ultimate act of self-confrontation. The heart itself is the key witness. The gods are merely the facilitators of a process where the soul's own conscience determines its fate. Atop the fulcrum of the balance sits a small baboon, another form of Thoth who watches the needle with divine impartiality. The hall is utterly silent as the pans settle. If the heart is heavy with sin and deceit, it sinks, outweighing the feather. It is then seized by Anubis and cast to the waiting Amit, who devours it, inflicting the second death and extinguishing the soul forever. But if the heart is light, unburdened by wrongdoing, it balances perfectly with the feather. A wave of divine relief seems to wash through the hall. Dupe records the favorable verdict, and the soul is declared makuru, true of voice, or justified. Part 3. The First Breath of Paradise, entering the field of reeds, Aru. With the declaration of Makeru, the terror of judgment dissolves into a profound sense of peace. The soul, now vindicated, is led by the falcon-headed god Horus into the immediate presence of the enthroned Osiris, who formally welcomes the justified spirit into his eternal kingdom. This moment marks a dramatic shift in the soul's journey, from a state of trial and fear to one of sublime wonder and relief. The final passage. The journey requires one final purifying act, a crossing of the shimmering lily lake. Here the soul encounters the ferryman Hrafaf, whose name means he who looks behind him. He is described as surly and obnoxious, presenting a final subtle test of character. The soul must demonstrate humility, kindness, and courtesy, even in its moment of triumph, to be granted passage. Having proven its virtue one last time, the soul is rowed across the placid waters to the shores of paradise. A landscape of perfected life, stepping onto the banks of Ayaru is a sensory rebirth. The oppressive subterranean darkness of the Dua is vanquished by the golden, perpetual light of an eternal sunrise. The air, once thick with menace, is now clear and filled with the delicate scent of lotus blossoms and the feeling of a gentle, cooling breeze upon the spiritual form. Forest, a perfected, idealized reflection of the Nile Valley the soul knew in life. It is a realm of boundless reed fields, organized as a series of tranquil islands. Here, the natural world exists in a state of impossible abundance. The barley grows to a height of 7 cubits, with heavy ears of grain measuring 2 cubits long on stalks of 5 cubits. The harvests are forever bountiful, and the concepts of drought, famine, and suffering are unknown. The landscape is saturated with vibrant color. Rivers of clear water flow under a sky of brilliant turquoise, and at the eastern horizon stand 2 sacred sycamore trees made of the same precious stone, marking the gate through which Ra emerges each morning to begin his journey. The restoration of all that was lost. This paradise is the place where everything thought to have been lost at death is lovingly restored. The soul discovers its former home, exactly as it was left, but now imbued with an aura of perfection. All loved ones who passed on before, parents, spouses, children, are there, waiting to greet the newcomer. Even cherished pets, whose loyalty was a comfort in the mortal world, are present once more. It is a land of eternal springtime, where there is no pain, no grief, and no longer any threat of death. The nature of this paradise reveals a core tenet of the Kemetic worldview. The afterlife is not a place of idle rest, but of perfected, joyous activity. Vignettes from the Book of the Dead consistently show the blessed dead engaged in the familiar tasks of agriculture, plowing the rich earth, spelling seeds, and reaping the impossibly tall grain. Spell 100 specifically grants the deceased the ability to continue these earthly activities. This is because agriculture was the foundation of Egyptian life, a sacred cycle of regeneration that was seen as a noble and life-affirming pursuit. The labor in Aaru is not toilsome, but deeply fulfilling, a harmonious participation in the cosmic order. The Ushabti figures brought from the tomb are not there to encourage laziness. They exist to perform any compulsory or arduous aspects of the work, leaving the soul free to engage in the pure, creative, and joyful act of cultivation. During his yoga practice, Edward Dasher brings ahs to the young philosopher, creating comfort for himself and peace. Ah is thus a celebration of the cosmos. Part 4. The Gathering of the Ka, Reunion with the Blessed Ancestors. The arrival in Aaru is the prelude to the journey's emotional and spiritual culmination. It is here, in the perfected light of paradise, that the soul undergoes its final transfiguration and is at last reunited with the lineage from which it came, becoming part of an eternal, divine community. The final transfiguration, becoming an Ak. Upon entering the field of reeds, the soul achieves its ultimate state of being. The Ke, the vital essence, and the B, the unique personality, which were torn apart at the moment of death, are now brought together in a permanent and perfect union. This sacred fusion gives rise to the H, Ach, a new and powerful form of existence. The H is a transfigured, effective, and blessed spirit, often depicted as a radiant, shining being. It is immortal, sharing characteristics with the gods themselves, and represents the complete, glorified state of the deceased, the ultimate goal of the entire arduous journey. The moment of recognition, as a newly formed H, the soul looks out across the golden fields and sees them, the Aku of its ancestors, gathered and waiting. They appear not as they were in sickness or old age, but in their perfected forms, restored to their eternal prime. The moment of recognition is an overwhelming wave of emotion that transcends mere sight. It is a feeling of coming home on a cosmic scale, a deep, soul-level certainty that one has returned to one's rightful place. The profound grief of separation, a sorrow carried through the terrifying darkness of the Duat and the tension of the judgment hall, finally dissolves in a flood of pure, unrestrained joy and relief. The embraces that follow are not of flesh and bone, but of luminous spirit, emerging of essences that communicates lifetimes of love, memory, and shared identity in a single timeless instant. All the pain of bereavement is washed away, replaced by the serene and powerful knowledge that the separation was only temporary and the bond of family is truly eternal. Life in the eternal community, the Aku, exists as an eternal family, a community unbound by the constraints of time and mortality. They work together in the fields of impossibly tall barley, their harmonious and joyful labor a form of living worship. They gather for great feasts, sharing the foods of the blessed dead and drinking the same divine nectars as the gods. They sail together on the tranquil celestial waters that wind through the islands of Aru. Their boats gliding through a collective, their individuality is not lost. Each soul's unique personality, its be, and identity, its ren, are perfectly preserved. Yet, there is no room for conflict, envy, or sorrow. They exist in a state of complete harmony, a society of justified souls living in the blessed presence of Osiris and the great gods. This reunion is the final and most important restoration of Ma'at. Death is a violent disruption of the cosmic and social order, tearing an individual from their family. The journey through the afterlife is a process of restoring the soul's internal balance. The reunion in Aaru completes this restoration on a familial and cosmic level, reweaving the individual spirit back into the eternal fabric of its lineage. The joy of this moment is not merely personal, it is the joy of the universe itself, returning to a state of perfect, harmonious order, with the family made whole once more, this time forever. Conclusion: the unbroken circle. The Kemetic spiritual journey is not a linear path to ecstatic heaven but a profound cyclical transformation. It is the story of a mortal being, a composite of physical and spiritual parts, who undergoes a ritual dissolution at death. This soul is then tested in the initiatory crucible of the duat, and judged by the weight of its own conscience in the hall of two truths. If found worthy, it is reborn into the perfected paradise of Aru, where its scattered components are finally reforged into the radiant and powerful form of an ancestral spirit. This transformation establishes an unbroken and sacred bond between the worlds. Life in Aru is not a state of disconnection. The Aku are effective spirits who retain the ability to influence the mortal realm, watching over their living descendants and offering guidance and protection from the other side. This power creates a reciprocal and sacred duty that forms the very heart of Kemetic spiritual continuity. The living in turn maintain this connection through veneration. They establish household shrines with images and mementos of the deceased, make regular offerings of food, cool water, and incense, and speak the names of their ancestors to ensure their memory and thus their existence endures. In return for this nourishment and remembrance, the Aku, now dwelling among the gods, act as powerful and benevolent intercessors for their kin. Ultimately, the entire spiritual framework of ancient Egypt, from the ethical conduct demanded in daily life to the intricate spells of the funerary texts, is designed to maintain the cosmic principle of Ma'at. The journey to Aru and the reunion with the ancestors is the ultimate affirmation of this principle. It demonstrates that a life lived in truth, balance, and justice is not merely rewarded, but is the very mechanism by which an individual transcends mortality to become an eternal and essential part of the divine cosmos. The unbroken circle of veneration from the living and protection from the blessed dead ensures that the family, the community, and the cosmic order remain whole, eternally bridging the realms of the seen and the un. This has been a Sharri Plaza presentation.